All right, we're ready to go. This is the Customary Care and Kinship Care Journey, a panel discussion, and from brought to you by Dot for Life. And my name is Jay Lomax. I'm from the Dakota Teepee First Nation in Manitoba, and I'm going to be your moderator and also a panelist with Isabella Rock. But first, before that, we're going to have Irene Compton do our traditional opening. Miigwech.
Anine, my name's Irene, and I'm from the Kizakus band in Saskatchewan, and it's my honor to be here today to open up your gathering. So I'm going to start with the medicines, and we always start our circles with our gatherings with the medicines so that we can cleanse ourselves to invite those ancestors in. And so we're going to cleanse our minds so that we'll have clarity and understanding. We're going to cleanse our ears so that we can listen with intent. We're going to cleanse our eyes so that we can see, especially a good future for our children and our youth. And we're going to cleanse our mouth so we be respectful to say good things to one another. I'm going to cleanse our heart so that we can make that connection to ourselves and to our Creator. And we're going to cleanse our tummy because that's where all your emotions sit. And so we invite those ancestors to be with us. And I'm going to sing the Bindigan song. It's a welcome song. So I want you to think about your own ancestors, your own grandmothers, grandfathers, especially the ones in the spirit world. We invite them to sit with us and guide us and take good care of us in the circle. I'm going to do 4 honor beats, and then we'll go into Bindigan as welcome, and then we'll invite the grandmothers or the grandfathers, Bishomis, the grandmothers, Nokomis, and then everybody else is Nagiwagama. So with this heartbeat, we invite those ancestors in through that eastern door. So let's invite them in.
Amy Witch, that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewas, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So I say thank you and miigwech and welcome. Unfortunately, we're missing a couple panelists here tonight, but I think that we have enough material. I think we have enough media to get us along and get this conversation going with what we really want to know. And so we have one of our panelists here, Isabella Rock. Isabel, I was just wondering if you can introduce yourself and where you're from.
Thank you so much, Jay, and thank you, Irene. That was beautiful. My name is Isabella Rock. I'm currently on Treaty 6 territory here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, on reserve, Yellow Quill First Nation. I'm originally from Hay River, Northwest Territories. So my family is Cree Métis, I'm Cree Métis. I also have ties to Thunderchild First Nation, here in Saskatchewan. My daughter and my spouse are members. So when I'm not here in Saskatoon, I'm spending time out there. And I guess in my career, I am a lawyer, and I've handled adoption applications, primarily adult adoption applications. I'm currently working for First Nations Bank in a whole different area of compliance, but customary adoption continues to touch my life, and my niece will actually be coming to live with me shortly. So this is a very personal topic for me, and I'm so happy to be here and join Jay and Irene. Thank you so much.
Which, and I myself am an adoptee from the 60 scoop. Well, 70 scoop. If I say 60 scoop, I'm aging myself too much. So I say 70 scoop. And, I came from the Dakota Teepee First Nation in Manitoba. And I'm currently right now working at the First Nations Technical Institute as an instructor teaching Indigenous education. But I really, we actually covered some of the adoption material this afternoon, 60s and 70s scoop survivor subject that been on our roster today. And so it was interesting to get that kind of conversation going amongst our students and amongst our future caregivers and even customary care or adoption caregivers in our communities. And that's what we've always been, that's all what we've always been doing is customary care or kinship care or adopting since the beginning of time. That's always been something that we've done for each other. We've always looked after each other's children. And so, Irene, did you, I think you introduced yourself, but did you mention your community?
Yeah, I'm from the Kizakus band, and I'm in touch with my relatives as they're going through this rough time right now. But looking forward to going home for ceremonies this summer.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. And most of my relatives live in Winnipeg too. We're related to the Stars from Sandy Bay, and my brother is Jim Compton, the communicator.
Good old Jim from the sharing circle that used to be on APTN.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very excellent show and very good host and commentator. Yes, I've had a lot of experiences, watching that program and positive experiences also. But getting back to the conversation, Isabel, what are the resources and supports that customary caregivers need to be successful in your line of sight?
Well, I already said I'm a lawyer, so some of this might be a little bit skewed towards the legal side of things, and so apologies for that. I'll try to keep it as interesting as possible, not so dry. But basically, what it comes down to is, in my opinion, a recognition of nations and self-governance. And, adoption is legislated province to province. And so it can vary, the protections for Indigenous families and the resources that are available to them. It varies by province. And so this causes some issues. And so specifically thinking of Saskatchewan, the Adoption Act doesn't recognize customary adoption at all. It's just silent on it. So customary adoptions are forced to go through or at least in our province, the formalized process, and it's taken away a lot of the beauty, I think, in customary adoption and the beauty in ceremony and what it means to the community component, I guess. It's not just individualistic. It's not one caregiver and one child. It involves the whole community. And how can we not only support the caregiver and the child, but how do we support the community as a whole, as the entire community transitions towards this change, whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent. And lots of communities have exercised their own self-governance. They have their customary care band regulations. I use the word band because I'm in Saskatchewan, but I understand, nations across Canada have various forms of governance. But I find that besides coming down right down to money, it comes down to money a lot of the time. But all of that stems, all of the resources that could be available all stem from recognizing nations as nations and not just sub-jurisdictions within provinces or not municipalities. So that's one way that really comes to mind for me, and really placing an importance on ceremonial supports and recognizing there's a spectrum. Not everybody, is as involved with ceremony, but when you're talking about customary care and customary adoption, ceremony is a huge component. And so recognizing that in terms of practicality, recognizing customary care and leave from work and as necessary, it goes down to what therapeutic supports are available for both caregiver, other family members, for the child. It's a really large, complex area that ties, I guess, everybody has something to contribute to customary care resources, especially as a province in Saskatchewan. I think we have a lot of work to do here.
Excellent. Miigwech. Irene, that we've been working on customary care for the last, decade. What are the resources you think could be successful for a customary care adoption?
Well, I work here in Ottawa with the Minwash and Lodge, the Indigenous Women Support Center. And, it's really important that what we have here is called Circle of Care. And so, it takes that circle of care to bring the women through the process and support it on all levels. Like, if they need a lawyer or if they need somebody to support them, if they need ceremony, we have Indigenous grandmothers and aunties that will sit with her. So, yes, it's really important that we have that circle of care in place, especially when they're transitioning through to adoption. So that's what we do with our women in here in Ottawa. So I think it's very important.
Excellent. And a few years ago, I'm no spring chicken anymore, but a few years ago, I did my MSW, and one of the components for my placement was to create a ceremony within the adoption spectrum. And so I was able to work with elders. I was able to work with managers, supervisors, and other people to create a ceremony for our children that were leaving care and going into adoption or going into kinship placements, and it's blasted off in terms of people want to do this because if you think traditionally, the adoptions were done in court, and so the um, family would get dressed up and get some cake and go to court, and we found that sometimes the judges didn't even know who was who in the matter, and they would have their picture with the judge, and then they would walk away with a copy of the order. That's good, but that's not the indigenous way of doing ceremony. When you do a ceremony, we have our ceremonial tools. We have our pipes. We have our medicines. We have the elders. We have the family. We have the foster family present, and everybody gets a chance in the ceremony to speak with the eagle feather, and gets a chance to talk about the positive that they've had with the child being adopted. And so everybody has a chance to speak without being interrupted, and has the floor, and is able to get across all the positive that the experiences they've had with the child being adopted or going into customary care. And it's so successful. It's so liberating for the people that are involved, especially when you have a giveaway, we have a feast. It's perfect. It's just so nice. And and I never thought that it could be that way, because when you start when you're in the planning stages, you don't know what the end result's going to be. And so I'm always receptive to people when they talk about, well, I want a ceremony. Well, I come in, well, as a matter of fact, I've helped with this before, and no, I'll never take credit for it because it came from the community, and that's how our things come about. It didn't just come from me; it came from the community, and something sparked an interest in myself to get this going. But I really think it's important for our kids, because when our kids left foster care or their adopt and going into their adopt placement, there was garbage bag suitcases at the door. There was no they didn't have a full set of luggage, and and I was doing these placements, and I just thought, what, there's got to be a better way to celebrate this union, and I think there's no better way than providing that ceremony. And if we have time later, I might show it to you, but I think the conversation is pretty good right now, where we're going. Isabella, any thoughts on that?
I was just nodding my head to all your great points, Jay. I have the video. If you did want to play it, we can share screen. We can wait till after our discussion if you prefer.
Yeah, I think we can wait till after the discussion.
Perfect. Thanks, Jay.
Because it is 12 minutes long, and I don't want to take up all of the discussion time. But just getting back to some of the questions, with time to attach, how could 15 weeks of additional attachment leave help to support customary caregivers upon placement of youth and children? Any thoughts on that, Isabel?
From a financial standpoint, it could make or break, to be honest. A lot of family situations, if they have that additional 15 weeks leave, it could keep a child in their family. That's the bottom line. Practically speaking too, it doesn't have just I'm saying kind of like the same thing again, but it doesn't have a benefit to just the caregiver that's receiving the leave. It has a direct benefit to the child. And I think it's really important to prioritize the child, to maintain a sense of home, of belonging, I can't imagine sending a child off that just moved the day before to daycare, but that's like, or childcare in general, but that's the reality for many customary caregivers. And I'd like to see that change. 15 weeks is a start. It's more than the US gets for maternity. I think we could do with even greater than 15 weeks. I would be very happy to see 15 weeks. I think it would be an incredible step in the right direction and really support the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report and what the government has committed to do. And we're just asking them to back it up.
Right. I think the 15 weeks is an additional allotment of time attached on to the already implemented time that they have. So I think that's where I was going. So I think that, some of our kids, are still going from placement to placement within child welfare sectors. And I think that, we're still trying to, they're still trying to reduce that trauma. But, the reality is you move a child more than one or two times, they carry that trauma for the rest of their life. And we all know with the ACE study, it's shown that, children that are young, under the, around the age of 3, could carry that trauma, and it could turn out to be a health issue, diabetes, or those sort of things. And it's I think that 15 weeks would help, with that transition.
Thanks, Jay, for clarifying. And what you bring up is very important about the health risks, and the long-term impact that this can have on the rest of a child's life. And yeah, stress is one of the number one causes for a lot of health related issues, right? And how can we alleviate that?
Irene, any thoughts on the 15-week additional allotment of time?
I'm not sure about the 15 weeks. I'm not sure because I don't know that much about it. But I'd just like to share with you, in my family, I had a brother, and he went into care back in the 60s. And what happened was my mother, she had to go to the big city to find work, and this farmer and this Sioux lady, they kept my brother, and she said she was coming back for him. So when she went back to get him, the big farmer run her off the land and said, "You're not going to get this boy," and that boy was, really, really impacted. My brother was, he died young. And he had heart problems. And I truly believe it's because he always longed to be with us. And he couldn't. He had to be on that farm. There was no rules and regulations in those days, but it really, really, truly impacted his whole life. Later on, we rekindled our relationship with him, and he has a really good, strong relationship with my brother and so on. But it's that sense of, where do I belong, and am I loved? Who loves me? And so that's what, and it's that intergenerational trauma. There's so many broken families where this intergenerational trauma is still happening, not only because they're Indigenous and they don't have a mother or father for whatever reasons. That's that intergenerational trauma working through there. So if we can get our youth and our little grade schoolers, whatever age or whatever stage of life that they're coming into care, if we can give them a stable home or relationship or connection, that's really important, because if they're stabilized like that, and not going into too many homes and being passed around and so on, they have a better chance. At least give them a chance for this. And so, yeah, it's that intergenerational trauma that's impacting that next generation, and hopefully, and I hope that that next generation will serve to stop that trauma, to stop it. And you know, these youth, and they go on to have their own children, and a lot of times, you know, like even in my family's totally been impacted by intergenerational trauma. But you know, I have a niece too that she's her mother died when she was young, and she was taken by care of the extended family. But I mean, that is such a traumatic loss. And so she went and had like 6 kids so that she would always have family around her. So, you know, that's important, is to have that extended family and that family around you.
Excellent. Thank you, English, for that response. So true, so true. You know, the extended family, you know, has always been around First Nations people, and that, you know, didn't serve us very well back in the 60s or 70s when, you know, child welfare agencies wanted us to, you know, be under the nuclear type family and only be cared for by the mother and the father. When we had the aunties, we had the uncles, we had the grandmas and grandpas helping out also, and their care wasn't taken as seriously. And you know, that was the situation in my case. You know, we had all of those extended family involved. So, Isabel, what is the importance of culture, identity, and land and customary care? What would the importance be?
Well, it's a large question because it's all very important. As we know, colonization has generally resulted in a large loss of land base and dispossession of many nations and peoples' families. I know for myself, like we were originally from Red River area, and we just kept getting dispossessed more northward. And so then we ended up in Northwest Territories where no one could touch us anymore. But seriously, though, in terms of the customary care process, a lot of it is urbanized. So the existing supports, a lot of them are in bigger cities. And I think that there could just be a general focus on land-based education, because this is still possible in an urban setting as well. But I just feel a lot for the urban Indigenous youth, that land and ceremony is a huge part of identity. And I can't speak for myself, but my spouse grew up on reserve, was moved off reserve at the age of around 5, and still very much connected with his reserve and his community and his land base. But I think that there's a period of, or even if it's just a perceived disconnect, the distance really can wear on a person and their sense of self, sense of worth, and how they fit into their community and their identity. You know, lots of people feel non-Indigenous enough. Some people feel too Indigenous for the space that they're in, because of systemic racism. And so I think that there needs to be a recognition of children as the gift that they are, the gift from the Creator that they are. And I'm really just big on ceremony and recognizing those gifts, and involves ceremony, and that's tied to the land. And so from like a legal standpoint, of course, I'm going to bring it back to that, but settling land claims, allowing communities to heal and move on, whether that be through, like, we oversee trusted community trusts and things, so we do a lot of programming, and just community building, community capacity building, but just moving towards self-governance. I'm all about self-governance and nations exercising what they've inherently always done, but have been impeded, or obstacles have been set in their place, often through racist legislation or general attitudes in general. But I think that we've made such amazing strides. And I've seen specifically since like 2014, like just a really big emphasis on Indigenous child welfare. So I'm excited to see where we can all go as family and community going forward.
Excellent. Miigwech. Irene, what is the importance of culture within customary care?
Everything you need is in your culture. And I tell that to the women that we serve at Minwashin, because that's the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of our way of life. And it talks to spirit. That's how we commune with creators, through our culture, through those ceremonies and our language. I really, really want the youth to start learning their language, because that connects them directly to the land and our way of life. And, it's just a total different way of thinking and understanding. And so, we have a lot of people come to our center, and they're, because of that intergenerational trauma, they might have had a disconnect with their families, and they're really hungry to know, who am I, and where do I come from? And I always tell them, see if you can find out where your First Nation is and go home for a ceremony and just shake hands with people and talk with them. And once you say your name, and they'll start saying, oh yeah, so and so, that's your cousin or whatever, right? And so that's kind of like beautiful gifts that open up in front of you. And then they start gathering those gifts and putting it inside of them, and they start to understand that they belong to something. They belong to a community that's been there for millennia. They belong to that, where all their ancestors stood for millennia. And so if they can get connected back to their territories or their reserve, just pick the medicine on that land, just shake hand with their relatives and participate in some ceremonies, then they understand where they come from. And then when they go back to the urban city, they can say, yes, I am from this nation, and my relatives live there, and I have relatives, and I have a language, and I'm starting to learn now, and I'm starting to gather all those teachings specific to from where I come from. And so it's totally amazing how the youth transform once they understand, because in that youth stage of life, they're still, we call them the wandering years, and they're still trying to figure out who they are and where they belong, and what's their purpose in life. So it's really important that they have that solid foundation, of course, of the culture, but firmly knowing who they are and how they want to walk in this world. And now today, everybody's reclaiming, which is really good. I'm really glad to see that everybody's reclaiming and coming back to what is truly originally theirs. And like I said, everything you need is in your culture, everything.
Since we're on the topic of culture, how can we change so that child welfare officials or authorities, how could they change it so that culture is there for people interested in customary care? And we've already talked a little bit about the ceremony, but is there any other way or resources they could utilize?
Well, I'm all about self-determination, and taking the lead on these things. So, people like what we do in our center is people in the children's aid. They have to have training, and so and it's not just training online or something. We have to come in and we have to talk to them. We have to tell them our stories. We have to open up their hearts and their minds so they understand, what their decisions, how their decisions impact those youth and those children. And so, I'm really for educating them, but also we have to be very careful with appropriation, because oftentimes we'll come in and we'll do these things, and then before you know it, they're claiming Indigenous identity and going out there and doing teachings and things like that. We do not want that. We want Indigenous people to take the lead on these things. If they are going to have education, they should have an elder come in or a knowledge keeper to come in and get those direct stories from the people themselves, because they have that lived experience. We have that history. I have all the knowledge of my history, and because of my mother, she went to residential school and she told me her whole story, and it's a beautiful story, but it's a story of incredible trauma, but also incredible resiliency and a strong spirit, because my mother had a really strong spirit. She is a true survivor. And so we have to get, the people that make those decisions, like Children's Aid or the schools, or all those systems that affect our youth, justice system, healthcare system, all these systems, they have to be educated. And now it's really, we're just at the beginning of this. And so I'm seeing a shift, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Which, Isabel, any thoughts on the importance of identity in customary care or culture?
Well, I think Irene really hit the nail on the head there, and gave me a lot to think about. Culture is really intertwined. It's a daily way of living, and it can't just be addressed in one area, and there's so much work that needs to be done in every area. A lot of education, we're on our way there, but it's a lot of hard conversations that need to be had, and we need to be comfortable having those conversations. And like, this is something I need to work on myself too. Like, my family went to residential school. My mom attended residential school. She has yet to share her full story with me, and she shares bits and pieces here and there with me, but it's looking reflectively at our past so that we don't make the same mistakes. And by we, I think as a country, there's a lot of work. And then as Indigenous people, we need to be continually asserting ourselves, and it's exhausting, but it's necessary work. And that's why we're here, is to help the little ones, and so that they're not faced with the same exhausting job when they're our age.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And I think I'm just looking at the clock here. I think that we have enough for Irene to close us off in a good way. Thank you so much, Isabel and Irene, for sharing your input. And it's been a good talk with you. And we'll have to have another one coming up very shortly. And it was nice meeting you tonight. So thank you, and miigwech. And Irene, did you want to do a song or?
Yeah, I'll do a closing song. But before we close, I just would like to say to you that I honor your intellect, but also those ancestors gave you a gift as well, and that's why you're doing that adoption ceremony. It's because that's your purpose, is to teach the people through ceremony. And when we do that, everybody gets it. Everybody that is witness to that ceremony takes it in. They feel it. When they feel it, they get it. So I honor your work in your journey. And also, Isabel, thank you. And I hope you come to have your mother's story so she feels safe enough to talk to you. And good luck with that. So I'm going to close with that travel song. We opened up with the welcoming song. So we're going to send those ancestors back home to Creator and thank them for being with us. So this is a heartbeat, and we're going to sing them back home. And the people would sing back. We especially pray for our youth, for their well-being and their empowerment and their leadership. Western direction, we acknowledge all those caregivers, all those foster parents, all those extended families. So let's sing those ancestors home. Have good dreams.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.